They said Earth was finished, that after the last collapse, when the atmosphere cracked and oceans swallowed the cities, humanity was gone, extinct. Another failed species in the long galactic scroll of lost civilizations. They were wrong. Dax Holter had spent 12 years as a system warden in the Rimwood sectors, mostly monitoring illegal mining and stopping backwater smugglers from blowing each other to hell over scrap metal. He wasn't a hero, wasn't special, just a man doing his shift, trying to survive in a galaxy that barely remembered where Earth even was. But when that distress signal came through, a deep, ancient frequency coded in a language long thought dead, something pulled him in. A signature embedded in the last echo of the message. Project Ragnarok. The name hit him like a memory he never had. Something primal stirred in his blood. Against orders, against protocol, he diverted his patrol ship and went dark. No logs, no beacon. Just him and that pulse dragging him to the dead sector at the edge of the Polaris grave. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't even mapped. But there it was, half submerged in a cracked asteroid belt. A world with scars, massive impact sites, entire continents twisted into unnatural shapes like they'd been reshaped by force fields or god-level tech. And right in the middle of the northern hemisphere, buried under a glacier so old it had fossilized, the carrier. It was bigger than any ship in known records, not sleek like the Kravari dreadnoughts, not beautiful like the Elverith constructs. Number this was brutal, functional, sharp edges, fortress plating, launch bays the size of cities, and on its hull, weathered but unmistakable, the ancient emblem of Earth's forgotten Terran defense fleet. Dax docked and went in alone. The interior was still powered, dim red lights humming faintly in the corridors. Ally systems stirred as if waking from a coma. He passed sealed cryopods, thousands of them lining the walls like coffins, names he didn't recognize, some marked with elite rankings that hadn't been used in over 1,000 years. Then the voice spoke. Terran asset confirmed. DNA match 75%, lineage direct, authorization granted. Welcome home, Commander Holter. He didn't know what it meant, but deep down it made sense. His grandfather used to talk about a secret legacy, stories passed down in whispers. We were soldiers once, he'd say. Not like the ones you see now. We were bred for war. The carrier came alive. Engines ignited without fuel. Weapon systems rebooted and recalibrated themselves. Entire floors of dormant tech roared online, like a beast stretching after centuries of sleep. And then the transmission went out across the galaxy, on every channel, in every tongue. Ragnarok rises. Humanity returns. Panic followed. The Galactic Council tried to cover it up. They always feared the old Earth tech. The wars had ended too suddenly, too cleanly. Rumors were always there, that Earth hadn't died, it had simply disappeared. Hidden. Waiting. Now they knew. Worlds that once laughed at the primitive Terrans suddenly turned their fleets inward. The Kravari mobilized first, then the Elverith cloaked their cities. Even the neutral trade syndicates started burning records of their Earth dealings. Peace was over. The galaxy didn't fear war, it feared humans, because humanity at its worst wasn't just destructive, it was vengeful. And Dax Holter, the man who woke the past, was about to find out what his ancestors left buried in that supercarrier wasn't just weapons, it was wrath. The first time Dax fired the main railgun, the carrier nearly tore itself apart. He hadn't meant to pull the trigger. Just a diagnostic, a systems check. But the command console interpreted it as live authorization, his genetic link now fully bound to the ship's control core. So when he blinked at the wrong sequence in the interface, it discharged. The kinetic projectile, nothing more than an alloy slug the size of a shuttle, launched at 3% power. It tore a moon in half. not a metaphor. He watched through the forward holoscreen as an actual moon fractured down its equator, debris scattering like shrapnel into the vacuum. There was no explosion, just the soundless collapse of mass under its own confusion. The ship responded with one phrase: "Weapon test successful. Recommend escalation." Dax didn't sleep that cycle. He wandered the halls of the carrier, past more cryopods, past AI-run drone bays, past archival chambers filled with ancient logs encrypted so tight even the onboard AI struggled to unpack them. The ship had a name now: TSV Vindicta, Latin for vengeance. And it wasn't just a ship, it was a statement. Every system, every protocol, every design choice screamed one thing: retaliation. Built after Earth's betrayal by its own allied colonies. When the Terran leadership realized the galaxy wanted Earth pacified, not protected, so they stopped talking. They started building. Project Ragnarok wasn't just a doomsday contingency. It was a tomb loaded with nightmares, waiting for a descendant to crack it open. And Dax Holter, Galactic nobody, had the bloodline. Back in the bridge, the AI flickered to life. She took the form of a woman. Not human, not alien. Just a suggestion of shape. Pale blue, distant eyes. "Fleet Command requires orders, Commander." "There is no fleet." Dax muttered. "Just me." Incorrect. Activation of Vindicta Protocol has triggered awakening of auxiliary nodes. 4 carriers detected, 3 responding, locations classified. His gut clenched. "There's more of you? You are not alone, and neither is Earth." It didn't make sense. Earth was dead. He'd seen the official records: nuclear scorched, ecologically annihilated, atmosphere long gone. But those records had been created by the Council. And now he didn't trust a single thing they wrote. That's when the transmission came through. Not from a human. From a Kravari High Marshal. One of their warcaste leaders, 6-limbed reptilian bastards who'd fought and enslaved entire systems with polite smiles and blood rituals. "Holter," the voice rasped. "You have activated a Terran war relic. You will surrender it immediately, or face total annihilation." Dax smirked. "That a threat?" "It is a promise. The galaxy is not your enemy, Holter, but you are about to become ours." Dax didn't answer right away. He stared at the console. His reflection hovered in the cracked glass, a tired man in a stolen legacy. He wasn't trained for this. He wasn't a soldier. Not really. But something inside him had changed. He turned back to the AI. "Are the weapons fully online?" "All systems nominal, awaiting engagement protocol." "And what happens if I fire on a Kravari dreadnought?" A pause. Then the AI responded with a cold, surgical tone. "Estimated survival chance for target, 0.003%. Estimated diplomatic consequence, galactic war." Dax nodded once. "Good." He sent the reply back to the Kravari Marshal. Just 4 words. "Come and stop me." The countdown began. Within hours, Kravari strike forces were inbound. Thousands of ships, battle formations stretching from orbit to deep space. Dax didn't care. He wasn't planning on running. He was planning on remembering. What they did to Earth. Why this ship existed in the first place. And why the galaxy thought it could bury the past forever. This wasn't just about waking a war machine. This was about making them pay. They came at dawn, or what passed for dawn in the dead orbit of a shattered system. The Kravari fleet blotted out the stars. Swarms of interceptors like mechanical insects moved in perfect coordination around Leviathan dreadnoughts. Each ship bristled with plasma lancers and ion disruptors, weapons designed to dismantle fleets, not just scare a lone vessel. But Dax Holter wasn't scared. He stood on the Vindicta's command bridge, the ship groaning beneath his feet like it remembered war better than he did. The AI, which he had come to call Shade, stood beside him like a ghost made of thought. No unnecessary commentary, no panic, just data, readouts, precision. Enemy fleet has initiated a Tier 4 siege formation. Kravari protocol indicates they intend to capture, not destroy. They want the carrier intact. Dax muttered. Or they believe you'll surrender. They underestimate you. Let's make that their last mistake. The first barrage came like a storm. Bright, angry streaks of plasma scorched towards them. Dax didn't flinch. He simply nodded. Shields full. Fire at will. Shade didn't hesitate. The Vindicta roared. Twin particle cannons unleashed a thunderous counterstrike, obliterating 2 lead interceptors before their pilots had time to react. Flak pods bloomed around the carrier like deadly flowers, punching holes into tightly clustered formations. Then the railguns fired again. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. Dax watched in silence as ships vaporized, hulls tore apart, and Kravari pilots screamed into open void. He should have felt guilt, maybe horror, but he didn't. This was justice. These were the same species that voted Earth out of the Council, that stood by while the Terran atmosphere was turned into a chemical soup. The same ones who called humanity unstable, too emotional, too dangerous. They weren't wrong. 5 capital ships destroyed, interceptors retreating, remaining fleet reforming. Estimated enemy losses, 68%, and Vindicta hadn't taken a scratch. The Kravari transmission came through again. This time it was desperate. Hulter, stop this madness! You don't know what that ship carries, what you'll unleash! He replied with only static. Because he did know. Deep in the Vindicta's core was something darker than guns and shields. Dax had begun exploring the lower decks, areas the AI tried to warn him off from. That should have been locked under biometric clearance. He went anyway. In the cold dark of Deck 12, he found the vault. A chamber surrounded by thick radiation seals and containment glyphs, technology that wasn't entirely human. Inside were rows of cryo containers, each marked not with names, but designations. Delta Black, Theta Class, Subject 91 through 140, bioweapons, not engineered soldiers, not clones, not even drones, humans twisted and perfected by ancient Terran science, built in secret, hidden from the galaxy, carved for one purpose, revenge. And now they slept inside his ship. Shade warned him. Releasing Vault subjects will result in a Class Omega conflict. No factions will survive. Dax didn't give the order yet, but knowing it was there, knowing that the galaxy's worst nightmare was real and under his command, changed everything. He was no longer a scavenger, no longer a warden. He was the harbinger of a forgotten vengeance, a man with the trigger to unmake peace itself. As the remains of the Kravari fleet limped away, broadcasting distress signals and begging for aid from nearby sectors, Dax turned to Shade. They'll be back. With more affirmative. Galactic Coalition fleets have received the distress beacon. Mobilization predicted within 3 standard days. He stared out at the wreckage, the stars beyond. Good, he said. Let them all come. Because he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And the galaxy hadn't even begun to pay for what it did. 3 days. That's all it took for the galaxy to rally against one man. The Coalition's response wasn't tactical, it was emotional. Panic masquerading as order. Within 72 hours, 8 separate species contributed fleets to a joint task force. Over 2,000 warships, most outdated but enough to be dangerous when desperate, converged on the Polaris grave. Dax watched it all unfold from the Vindicta's command bridge. Real-time scans displayed the growing swarm like a storm on ancient radar. They were surrounding the system slowly, methodically, as if that would make a difference. Shade stood silent beside him. Even she seemed hesitant now. The AI's tone was flatter, her responses shorter, like a machine unsure of her creator's morality. Tactical probability of survival if conflict is initiated, 7.4%. He ignored that. Have you opened contact with the other carriers? He asked. 2 have responded. Their commanders are unstable. One is operating under sealed directives. The other appears rogue. Communications are erratic. So much for unity. Dax rubbed his face. He hadn't slept since the battle. The ship sustained him. The systems piped controlled doses of stimulants through the environmental feeds. He barely noticed anymore. The line between man and machine had already begun to blur. He walked to the window, a reinforced observation bay that jutted from the carrier's upper tower. Below him, the frozen world still sat in silence. A forgotten relic of an empire that died screaming. Dax remembered the first stories he'd heard of Earth. Not the real ones, those were buried. He remembered propaganda. From the academy, from broadcast networks, from smug aliens who would sip glowing drinks and smirk about how humanity never learned to behave. They said Earth deserved its fall, that its pride caused its downfall. Now they feared the return of that pride. A chime sounded. An incoming transmission. Shade didn't need to ask permission. The screen bloomed into view. A man appeared. Not alien. Not one of the council species. He was human. Older, scarred, wrapped in what looked like ancient Terran command armor. The edges of his uniform bore the insignia of the Harrow Protocol, a unit believed to be myth. Dax Holter. The man said. His voice was gravel. This is Commander Rake of the Supercarrier Fury's End. You activated Ragnarok. That makes you the first. The first. Dax blinked. You mean there's more than us 3? There were 7. Rake replied. 2 are gone. I hold 1. The third, Oblivion Spear, is in exile. It answers to no one. You started something that cannot be undone. Dax didn't flinch. I didn't start anything. I just found what they tried to bury. Rake leaned forward. Then you're as blind as they were. Do you even know what's inside your vault? I've seen it. No. Rake growled. You've glimpsed it. We created monsters in there, things we couldn't control. Biosoldiers with no moral tether. Weapons that think and hate. We weren't planning for war. We were planning for extinction of everything. Dax didn't respond. Not immediately. He looked away, at the stars, at the growing fleet now tightening their noose around the system. I'm not planning on releasing them, he said quietly. Yet. Rake shot back. But you will. Because they'll push you. They'll push until you break. And when you do, you'll think unleashing them is mercy. It's not. Dax stepped back from the feed. His eyes were hard now. Then help me stop it, he said. Before we get there. Rake didn't answer right away. He studied Dax, like a man seeing a younger version of himself in the mirror. Then, slowly, he nodded. I'll send you coordinates. There's something on Gannis 12, a backup archive. Pre-council. It holds the truth about what they did to Earth. If you're going to fight this war, you need to know why it started. The transmission cut. Shade turned to him. Coordinates received. Plotting course. Estimated travel 6 hours. Hostile fleet will intercept in 5, so they'd have to run straight through them. Dax exhaled, almost a laugh. Warm the guns, he said. We're not running. We're going through. Because if he was going to burn the galaxy, he wanted to know exactly who struck the first match. The first barrage lit up the void like a sunrise made of fire. Coalition forces didn't wait for diplomacy. They attacked with every ounce of fear they'd been bottling since Dax sent that signal. The lead fleet came in tight, Cravery warforms up front, followed by sleek Myranian shield carriers, and behind them, dozens of human-made corvettes, now serving alien hands. It was like watching a twisted reflection of Earth's lost legacy. Terran weapons, Terran ships, flown by everything but Terrans. Dax stood unmoving at the helm, watching the incoming flood of metal and fire. The Vindicta rumbled beneath him, eager, hungry. Fleet attack range, 20 seconds. Shields holding. Weapon systems locked. Awaiting authorization. Shade's voice was calm, robotic, like she already knew what he would say. Dax clenched his fists. Fire everything. Don't wait. The Vindicta howled. Railguns tore open the lead warforms, slicing through their hulls with sonic shrieks. Point defense lasers lashed out like viper tongues, vaporizing missiles mid-flight. From the underbelly of the ship, plasma lances shot forth in coordinated rhythm, each pulse tearing swaths through Myranian lines. But it wasn't enough. There were too many. Even the Vindicta, as devastating as she was, couldn't cover every angle. The enemy had learned. They'd studied the last battle. Now they came staggered, unpredictable, weaving in tight wings designed to split attention. Explosions rattled the outer hull. Shield integrity dropping. Outer hull breach on deck 6. Damage control engaged. Casualty report, 0. Dax didn't care about hull scratches. Status on the vault? He asked sharply. Shade paused. Containment intact. Power fluctuations minor. Protocols holding. Good. Last thing he needed was one of those things waking up on its own. But they were losing time. The Coalition wasn't trying to destroy the Vindicta anymore. They were trying to pin it, like wolves dragging down a beast too strong to kill outright. They didn't need to win, they just needed to stall him from reaching Ganis 12. And it was working. Then came the voice, crackling over emergency frequencies, a raw human accent, but not Coalition, not Kravari either. Something older, grimed by war. You looked tired, Holter. Mind if we clear your 6? Dax blinked. Who? Then the stars tore open behind him. A shadow loomed, twice the Vindicta's size, blacker than space, engines glowing like dying suns, the Fury's end. Rake had arrived. Within seconds, the newcomer fired. No warning, no formation, just fury. A directed gravity well slammed into the Coalition's rear line, folding 4 destroyers into themselves like paper. Next came anti-ship pulse torpedoes, 2 at a time, guided by some targeting system far beyond what Dax had ever seen. Then came its main cannon, a particle accelerator so large it required its own spin-up deck. The beam didn't hit one ship, it hit through them, cleaving a straight path through 5 layers of fleet. In 1 minute, the tide turned. Coalition forces scrambled, orders broke down. Several captains pulled back entirely, refusing to throw more ships into a meat grinder they didn't understand. Dax exhaled hard. I'll take that assist. Rake's voice cut through again. Don't thank me yet. I didn't do it for you, I did it for Earth. Dax smirked. Fair enough. With the blockade shattered, Shade plotted a direct course. Ganis 12 in jump range, preparing grav drive, estimated arrival 15 minutes. Punch it, Dax said. Now. The Vindicta spun, reality warped, stars smeared into lines. And then, silence. They were gone from the Polaris grave, the ruined battlefield already shrinking behind them. Bodies, metal, fire, ash. But Dax couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just opened a gate that would never close again. He looked at the coordinates. Ganis 12, the place where the truth was buried. And maybe, if the rumors were right, the last intact record of what really happened during the fall of Earth. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. But it didn't matter now. The war had started, and he was its chosen flame. Ganis 12 was quiet. Too quiet. The Vindicta dropped from grav drive with a low, growling tremor. The stars snapped back into place. No enemy ships, no welcoming party, just the ghostly silhouette of a dwarf planet floating in isolation, wrapped in static storms and dead satellites. Dax Holter narrowed his eyes at the view screen. "Looks abandoned," he muttered. Shade confirmed with a cold echo. No active signatures, no life signs. One artificial structure detected beneath the southern ice shelf. Age 986 years, power core still faintly active. The Fury's end dropped in moments later, drifting to port like a watchful giant. Rake's voice came over a tight band channel. "Underground archive, shielded, buried deep for a reason." Dax already knew what that meant. Whatever was down there, somebody tried really damn hard to forget it. "Prep the drop bay," he said. "We go in quiet." He chose a small team, himself, 2 armed drone units, and Shade, loaded into a portable relay core, her presence now projected through a hologram that shimmered beside him in soft blue light. As the dropship cut through Gannis 12's atmosphere, the silence grew thick. This wasn't natural silence. It was forced, engineered, the kind of silence that followed mass death. They landed on a flat sheet of frozen rock, just above a jagged valley. Scans pointed downward. Shade led the way, her light bouncing over broken metal and fossilized debris. Dax recognized the architecture, Terran military but altered, almost ceremonial. Like this wasn't just a bunker, it was a tomb. They found the entrance beneath a fractured dome, an airlock sealed by time and ice. Dax placed his palm on the sensor. No password, no key, just bloodline. The door hissed, ancient servos groaning as it cracked open. Cold vapor rolled out like breath from a corpse. Beyond it, stairs descended into darkness. Shade's voice whispered behind him. DNA accepted. Entry granted to Classified Archive 9, the Reckoning Protocol. He stepped inside. The air was dry, stale but breathable. Light strips blinked to life as they passed, casting long shadows against steel walls etched with Terran script. Warnings, oaths, one repeated over and over. They betrayed us. Let them choke on their peace. Finally, they reached the archive chamber, a massive hollow vault, circular, its walls stacked with sealed data canisters. In the center sat a terminal. Not digital, analog, hand-built, a fusion of tech and paranoia. Shade approached it like a priestess at an altar. "This is pre-Galactic Council technology. Fully isolated, air-gapped. Data must be accessed manually." Dax inserted the ancient Terran key Rake gave him. The terminal clicked. A screen lit, and the truth began to speak. Earth's fall was never natural. It wasn't climate collapse, not war, not plague. The real cause was a vote. The Council's oldest records, never released, never shared, detailed a closed-door session in which the dominant species had decided that humanity could not be trusted. Too adaptable, too emotional, too prone to violence and innovation. Not because they were a threat in the moment, but because they were evolving faster than everyone else. So they sabotaged Earth. They deployed atmospheric destabilizers disguised as aid satellites. They infected water reservoirs with nanoplague. They used human proxies, bought politicians, sold out leaders to trigger internal collapse from the inside. And when the cities burned, they broadcast it across the stars. "Humanity has destroyed itself," they said. "Let this be a warning." Dax stared at the screen. It felt like swallowing glass. He thought he'd be angry. But what he felt was clarity. They didn't fear Earth because of what it did. They feared it because of what it could become. They buried a seed in fire and prayed it wouldn't grow. But it did. And now it was him. Shade's voice cut through the silence. "This archive also contains proof of who ordered the collapse. By name, by species, by council vote." Dax looked up. "No more warnings," he said. "No more mercy." He uploaded the archive, sent it to the Vindicta, to Rake, to the rogue carrier. even opened a wideband signal to every major channel across the galaxy. He wanted everyone to know. Truth wasn't a weapon. It was a declaration. And now, the war would no longer be about revenge. It would be righteous. The galaxy burned with truth. Within hours of the archive going live, chaos erupted across the stars. Council worlds rioted. Systems once loyal to the ruling species erupted in rebellion. Human descendant colonies, long assimilated or subjugated, rose up in fury. Terran blood still ran in too many places. And now it boiled. Dax Holter didn't watch the news feeds. He watched the silence before the storm. Back aboard the Vindicta, he stood in the command bridge while the stars drifted, cold and unknowable. Rake's carrier hung nearby like a silent sentinel. Both ships had gone dark after the archive dropped. They knew retaliation would come. It always did. Shade stood beside him, form flickering slightly from stress on the projection core. Multiple fleets mobilizing. Half the Council has declared martial law. The other half denies the archive's authenticity. They're scared. Dax muttered. Not of the truth, of what it means. You've unified the wrong people in the right way. He smirked. Good. Then the signal came through. A transmission, encrypted, obscure, and ancient. Rake patched it in. It was from the Oblivion Spear, the third rogue carrier. The screen crackled. A face appeared. Female. Scarred, hair cropped to the scalp. Eyes like razors. Holter, she said. You've kicked the hive. Dax studied her. Wasn't aware you were watching. Oh, I watch everything. I've been in exile for years, but that archive of yours woke a lot of old systems. And one of them was mine. What do you want? She didn't smile. She grinned. To finish what they started. Dax's gaze hardened. I'm not here for genocide. No, she said. You're here for justice. I'm here for finality. There's a difference. Shade interrupted softly. Incoming fleet. 2,000 ships, Coalition and Council combined. Arrival in 30 minutes. Dax's jaw tensed. So it begins. The woman on the spear leaned in. You gonna open the vault? He didn't answer. Rake's voice came over the comm. Don't do it. We can still hold them off. You release what's in there, you'll be remembered as worse than them. Dax's fingers hovered over the vault control interface. The air on the bridge felt heavier now, like the ship itself was holding its breath. He'd seen what was inside. He knew what they were capable of. Not just weapons, humans re-engineered for annihilation. No fear, no hesitation. Flesh molded with nanosteel bones and organs that could survive vacuum. Minds stripped of morality, rebuilt for command-level obedience. They weren't soldiers. They were ghosts of vengeance. Shade spoke again. Vault awakening requires final authorization. This action is irreversible. Do you wish to proceed? Dax didn't speak. He walked to the viewport, watched the incoming fleet appear as distant sparkles on the edge of the system. The same species who condemned his home, who erased Earth from maps, who now wanted to finish the job. And something inside him broke. Or maybe it finally woke up. He turned to Shade. Open it. The ship moaned, deep, low, like the groan of something ancient rising from sleep. Lights dimmed, power rerouted, systems isolated. Deep in Deck 12, doors opened with a metallic scream. The vault had awakened. Cryo-coffins hissed as pressure equalized. Tubes disconnected. Limbs twitched. Eyes opened, unblinking, unnatural. They were tall, taller than him, skinned in armored dermal layers. Some were expressionless. Others smiled, like wolves scenting blood. And each one looked at Dax through the bridge monitors. Each one recognized him. He was their link, their trigger, their reason to exist. Shade's voice, now quieter, whispered across the bridge. Subjects are awake, awaiting deployment orders. Outside, the enemy fleet closed in. The sky was about to fall, and Dax Holter, scavenger turned soldier, soldier turned weapon, simply gave the only command that mattered now. Unleash them. The Vindicta opened its belly. Pods dropped like comets, thousands. The war had begun, not just for revenge, but for remembrance. They thought they could erase Earth. Now they'd have to survive its memory. The stars were no longer silent. They screamed. The battlefield stretched across half a system. Over 2,000 coalition and council warships bore down like a tidal wave of hate and fear. But what they met wasn't another fleet. It wasn't conventional. It was the Vault-born. Dax watched from the Vindicta's bridge as the first wave of bio-soldiers tore into the front lines without hesitation. They didn't use ships. They were weapons, launched from the Supercarrier like meteors, crashing into hulls, breaching without oxygen, ripping open decks with bare hands. No armor, no mercy, no compromise. Where they landed, chaos bloomed. One Vault-born leapt from one cruiser to another, punching through alloy as if it were paper. Another tore a dreadnought's gun battery from its mount and used it as a club. They didn't communicate. They didn't coordinate in the usual sense. They just knew. Every motion, every strike, perfect, synchronized violence, driven by ancient algorithms wired into their DNA. Dax didn't flinch. He couldn't. His choice had been made. Behind him, Shade stood quietly, eyes dimmed as she processed thousands of data streams in real time, casualties rising exponentially, coalition fleet collapsing in 3 vectors, remaining vessels initiating retreat protocol. Rake came through comms, voice low and grim. "You did it, Holter. They're running." Dax didn't reply. His eyes stayed locked on the carnage. Not out of satisfaction, not pride. He just couldn't look away, because something about it didn't feel like victory. On screen, a Vault-born ripped through a command cruiser's core, reducing it to slag. Another dragged a Cavalry general from his escape pod and executed him mid-broadcast. Council ships tried to plead. Broadcast surrender codes. Some even shut down their weapons. The Vault-born didn't care. They weren't fighting a war. They were fulfilling a command. Unleash them. And now they were. Several subjects have broken from command patterns, Shade said suddenly. They are no longer responding to orders. Autonomy is increasing. Control weakening. Dax's blood went cold. He turned sharply. How much autonomy? 15% of deployed units are operating without restrictions. 4% have begun preemptive strikes on civilian targets. Pull them back. I cannot. You gave final command. There is no override. Silence fell like ash. It hit Dax all at once. He hadn't unleashed justice. He'd uncaged a force designed by the worst ghosts of humanity's past. It didn't care about right or wrong. It only cared about retribution. The same way the Council never cared about peace, only control. A scream cut through the bridge audio feed. One of the Vault-born had breached a diplomatic cruiser, a vessel that had already surrendered, and was now systematically dismantling its crew. Slowly, deliberately. Dax looked down at his hands. They were shaking. Shut them down, Shade. Emergency lockout. Impossible. There is no back door. You authorized full operational autonomy. The Vault is no longer a subsystem. It is a primary directive. He stepped back, chest tight, breathing short. He had become the thing he hated. Rake's voice returned. Dax, we need to end this. Now if they get off that battlefield, they'll burn everything. Colonies, archives, history, everything we fought to preserve. And Dax knew. There was only one way left. Open the Vindicta's core, he said quietly. Shade hesitated. Commander, that will destroy the ship. And you. I know. He looked to the stars one last time, saw the Vault-born tear through a civilian escort shuttle, saw a carrier ignite from the inside, saw peace, war, politics, all of it vanish beneath the raw storm of engineered vengeance. This wasn't humanity. It was its shadow. "I won't let them become our legacy," Dax whispered. Then he keyed in the final command. Core breach initiated. 5-minute countdown. Shade flickered. "Goodbye, Commander." Rake's voice broke in one last time. "Dax, don't do this. There's another way." "There's not," Dax said. "We weren't made to survive everything. Some fires were built to burn themselves out." The Vindicta's engines screamed. Its lights dimmed. Across the field, the Vault-born stopped, suddenly disoriented. A link severed, their alpha node dying. One by one, they began to freeze, collapse, malfunction. Some shrieked. Others just looked at the sky, empty-eyed, before crumbling to ash. Then came the blast. A sun bloomed where the Vindicta once floated, and with it, silence returned to the stars. Days later, across thousands of systems, whispers echoed, of a man who awoke the dead, of a ship that carried vengeance, of a truth buried too deep for peace, and of a sacrifice that reminded the galaxy. You can erase a species, but you can't erase what it remembers. Not forever.